Welcome back to The Chosen Journey with Big Money Grip, Steve Karsay, and The Chosen Lawyer. And Steve, we're on to chapter 53. And as promised, we're going to talk about the WBC and we're going to go start from the end and work our way back. So today's chapter is all about congratulations to Team Japan. They obliterated the competition. They won the 2023 World Baseball Classic. Steve, those last two games, especially the final, I'm still on the edge of my seat. Some of the best baseball I've ever seen.
Yeah, it was a fantastic tournament. Baseball won for sure. I mean, it was just one of those things where, you know, you tune in to every game, there's something new. Obviously teams are restricted with who they can use, especially like the US because it comes from, major league teams not wanting to overuse players, right? So there's a little limitations there, but overall, I think you've seen a great product of what the world has with its baseball talent.
I would love to know the story of who or which group of people concocted the whole idea of the World Baseball Classic originally. And, we had a bit of a break there with the pandemic, lost a little bit of momentum. It came back. And it seems like it's the same story every year when we have the World Baseball Classic. Guys agreed to join, then they drop out for whatever reason. And then by the time the finals are played, people are saying, wow, I wish I had put myself on the roster. I will definitely be there in the next one. And then 3, 4 years later, they'll forget again. But this year, among all the years, I would say this is one of the most exciting ones I've ever seen for certain.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you always gotta work out the kinks, right? When you first start this, it's an every 3 or 4 year process. You start it early, and then guys figure out if it's for them, if it's not for them. The determining factor is getting ready for spring training. Was a guy coming off an injury the prior year, and then the World Baseball Classics the next year. Obviously, Trout being the captain of the USA team, he loved it. Obviously, Shohei loved it because they love playing for their country. And again, I think hitters have more of an advantage, as we discussed in an earlier episode, of being in the World Baseball Classic because they can prepare a little bit better than pitchers can. In other countries, like Japan, those guys are playing since January. So maybe they have a little bit more of an advantage because they're playing together as opposed to some of these other clubs who are pulling from major league teams or minor league teams and having to put a team together and practice not until February or March before it starts.
One thing I never want to hear again is that this is a make believe tournament. There's no passion. Nobody gets behind it. That is completely false. I remember coming to Phoenix and going to see a couple games and speaking with yourself, speaking with Kareem Garcia. I definitely planned to see Mexico, USA, and I was going to watch Canada, USA. And I told Kareem, don't worry about it. I'm going to find tickets. It's always easy to get tickets in the first round. He laughed at me. He said, you watch Mexico, USA. There will not be a seat available. He was right. I didn't realize it did sell out very early. I was lucky to get seats on StubHub. I ended up in the outfield. And man, walking from the car parked blocks away, going to a restaurant, seeing the other restaurants, going into the ballpark, you felt like you were in Tijuana. Like literally everybody was wearing a Team Mexico jersey, hat. I actually saw a guy standing outside of one of the bars with a signed Kareem Garcia jersey. Lo and behold, that he had met him in Mexico. So we took a picture together. What are the odds? The one autograph I see is a Kareem Garcia autograph. But from the beginning, from the second I got out of my car to the second I got back into my car after the game, this literally was Team Mexico. Like we are in the USA, you'd have no idea. It was about 90%, maybe 80% Mexico versus USA fans in that stand. And they were rocking, singing the whole game. It was like being at a World Cup soccer game. It was incredible.
Passionate fans, that's all I can say, right? They love their baseball in Latin America, whether it's Mexico, the Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Venezuela. They love it. Like that's a passion for them, and for them and guys to play for their country, and for this to be that big of a game on the world stage and being played, everybody loved it. And that's what baseball is. Do I wish it would be at a different time of the year? Probably so, because I think it would definitely be a more balanced and more even field because guys would be in shape and ready to go. But at the end of the day, even if it's in March, the intensity is at a very high level, and not only for the players but for the fans. They really enjoy it and they really back their country, and it's just a passion, and they want to win so bad.
I could tell you my thoughts when I think this should be in a perfect world, but this ain't gonna happen. But if I was going to be doing this, it's not going to be at the end of the season. Go see the Pro Bowl. It doesn't work. I think the only way is to pause the season, no All-Star game that year, and we're putting it in mid-season. But for many logistical reasons, that's never gonna. I don't see it happening. No way they're gonna cancel the All-Star game. No way they're gonna pause the season. But I think that's the only way you can really do it. If you had a choice of where you could put it, where would you have it?
I would put it at the end of the season.
The end, eh? Okay.
That's where I would put it. You can't, in my opinion, you just can't do it like hockey does it or basketball does it because they're playing one game, right? World Baseball Classic takes 3 weeks. You can't give major league players 3 weeks off and pick and choose who you want to do. And then what happens if a team is in first place and their player gets hurt in the World Baseball Classic right in July or August, and they don't have them for the stretch run for the last 6 weeks? I don't think that would ever fly. I don't like it in the beginning, only for the same fact is if guys get hurt, Altuve gets hit by a pitch, breaks his thumb, he's out for 6 to 8 weeks. Now the Astros don't have him in their lineup for 6 to 8 weeks. I mean, obviously they're going to have to find a way to replace him until he's healthy. You got the Wainwright deal. You got a couple other guys that got banged up in that, and obviously Edwin Diaz, right? I mean, look at that. Like that's not even pitching. It was just celebrating. He was jumping up and down, and he tore something in his knee, and he's out for the whole year, which is a big deal. Imagine that happening in mid-season in early August, and then you losing a guy for like Altuve for 8 weeks. Now you've lost him for the rest of the season. So I just think it's a hard time to have that at the end of the season. Uh, Guys maybe that have not thrown as much, or guys you can pick from a pool that didn't make the playoffs or whatnot. You'll still have a bunch of guys that you can choose from, and still have a quality team when they're in shape and when they're ready to go.
I'm thinking like the way they have it in hockey, they have this tournament called the Spangler Cup, which I don't know if anybody even watches it exactly, but the way it works, my understanding of the cup is season ends, teams that make the playoffs, start the Spangler Cup tournament. From the pool of players that did not make the playoffs, those are the ones that go into the tournament. And as your team gets eliminated, you can get added to the roster. So that in your if you're gonna go with that, I think you have to go that route instead of waiting until the end of the World Series. I think guys are too tired. It's been too much of a break from the regular season, so I think you have to go that route. Plus you can get international players as well at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would have no problem with that. I mean, at the end of the regular season, maybe that's when you have it, and the teams who make the playoffs again, you can add those players once they get eliminated from the playoffs to the roster because again, they don't have to get in shape, right? They're already in shape. They've already been playing. They've played 162. If you get eliminated in the first round of the playoffs, you can jump right in because again, you have some days off in the World Baseball Classic. It's probably what is it, 7 game total if you go through the round robin and then into the elimination bracket. I think Japan was 7-0, I believe, in that tournament. So and it takes 3 weeks, and they get plenty of time off. So that would be an ideal way to look at it. Is at the very end of the season, you pick your teams. You got international players. You got a pool of players who are healthy, ready to go, and in shape.
I think we made a fair compromise there. Okay, I'm good with that. I think we've solved their problem. Let's do it. So hopefully Rob Manfred's listening to this and he can start his planning. I gotta say, there's several scripts to this World Baseball Classic, but if they had scripted it in Hollywood, they couldn't have done any better than this. I mean, they got what they wanted out of it. In the road to the WBC Finals, no surprise, I think the USA beat Cuba. Cuba, we'll talk about another chapter, was in a fairly, I would say, weaker pool. And while Cuba, seen as a powerhouse, you look at their lineup versus the earlier WBCs, it's a lot different. Even though major league players can play in Cuba, it just seems like they're not getting the rosters for whatever reason. So I think it was fairly certain that USA was going to beat them. The Japan Mexico game, I think got overlooked a lot for the finals, and Japan almost didn't make it. That was a tooth and nail game. And in my estimation, not being a baseball insider, but just being a fan of the game, a historian of the game, and watching how it got played out, I just think that Japan outmanaged Mexico. They just played it like a chess game. They knew all the right moves at the right times. They never deviated from their plan, never panicked, did all the little things you need to do. If I was a minor league team or a little league team, I would point to that game and say, you want to see how to play small ball guys? Watch this game.
What a game. Yeah, I was glued to my TV too for that game. Japan was Japan had many opportunities. They had bases loaded a couple times. They just couldn't push a run across. They just couldn't get the big hit, and then they just kept chipping away. Made it close enough. There was a play at the plate where a guy got thrown out on a base hit uh, to make it 5-3 instead of 6-3, which made a big difference. And Japan just never gave up. Right? I mean, they just continued to put good at bats together. And at the end of the day, we're fortunate to come out on top and get to the finals. But what a tremendous game that was. It was very enjoyable to watch as a fan, and it had a lot of good moments in it.
Having lived for a game with the Team Mexico fans in the outfield there in Phoenix, they were crying in their coronas at that point. I mean, it was they must have felt so good throughout that game. It's funny because two-thirds of the game, I believe Mexico was leading it at least, and they were hoping and hoping. But it was funny, when you see the final score, you're saying obviously Japan was going to take it. But when you were watching the game, Mexico has that 3-0 lead for the longest time. If Japan doesn't chip away that 3-0 lead, you ain't going to win this game. And Japan just kept coming, kept coming, kept coming, and one pitch, and that's all it takes. And it seemed like it was inevitable, it was going to happen, but until it actually happens, you never know.
Yeah, you never know. That's the wonderful thing about baseball. It's one inning, it's one pitch, it's one mistake by a position player to make an error and give an opportunity to the opposing team. And you can always play the game on paper, right? Like this team is better than this team, or this team's going to win the division because they have the highest payroll, or whatever it may be. But until you put the players on the field and until you let them play what is essentially a nine-inning baseball game, you're never going to know who's going to win. You can have an idea because of better players or higher payroll or whatever the stat may be, but until they go out there and play, I mean, you just gotta, you know, especially in bracket play, where one game, it's like a game seven. Every time you get into bracket play, it's game seven. One little mistake, can cost the game and knock you out of the tournament. But again, it was a fabulous tournament, tremendous tournament, great for baseball, great for the world to see different countries and different players on the stage. And obviously, the one thing that it sticks in my mind is the young man from the Netherlands who ended up striking out three All Stars. Ends up after that getting signed by the Detroit Tigers and is now in their system to see what happens. So those are the great stories that come out of the World Baseball Classic and give players opportunities in a game that they love to try to go and play and compete against the best.
And for those fans out there that say these teams, major league teams, rush to give these giant contracts to Japanese players that have never played one inning in Major League Baseball, why? How is it? You watch a tournament like this, and a lot of Team Japan was not in the Major League systems. They were back from the Japanese leagues, and you can say, "Wow!" Like you can see the work they put in, the fundamentals, their understanding, and they beat MLB All Stars. They beat a stacked MLB All Star team, and so they stood the cream of the crop. They went undefeated, and you can see each of those players. You hear their particular stories during the game and how special they are. And each one with their defensively, offensively, with the glove, pitching. And you're saying, yeah, I can understand why 30 teams would line up and hand millions of dollars to these guys because they are so fundamentally sound. Now, not every Japanese player hits, obviously, as far as hits as far as ends up being a success story. But when you compare them to other countries, you can see why Japanese players are in demand, period, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the Japanese baseball league is very similar to what Major League Baseball is over here, right? So you take the best of the best over there. Obviously you have analytics and you have metrics, and doesn't matter if a guy throws the ball the same as in Japan as they do here. That's the caliber of player that they are. If they throw 100 miles an hour in Japan, they're going to throw 100 miles an hour here. Now it's up to the scouts and the front offices and all of that to evaluate how it's going to play over here with the ballparks and all of that. But essentially, many people have seen it. The Japanese players that come over here are very talented, and a lot of them work out, and a lot of them don't. But you know what? There's a lot of first rounders that work out, and there's a lot of first rounders that don't. So it's very equal. It's just a matter of how you scout and how you look at a player. And the biggest thing I think for me is with a Japanese player, you get to track them and they get more seasoning over in Japan playing because they're usually not posted or coming over here until they're 23, 24, 25 years old. So you have a better foundation to know who that player is and what he's capable of before signing him to those big dollar deals and having him come to the United States to play.
And that's one of my funny hypothetical what ifs, my obscene what if questions. 30 MLB teams, given the choice, all else being equal, they can trade their roster right now for the roster from the 2023 Japanese World Baseball Classic champion team. How many of them do it?
I don't know, maybe a handful, maybe. I mean, again, it's how you view that. Is every player on that Japanese roster going to have success in the big leagues if they're playing against a big league roster from guys who are all over the world? I don't know. You're just taking a small group of one caliber player in Japan and trying to play that type of baseball against 29 other teams. So I don't know. They have great players, like I said. I mean, that would be a debate for many years to come about how they would do. But I maybe one or two teams. I don't know. I mean, it's really hard.
I would guess as much as half, at least a third. But also, you got to have that Japanese manager. You go watch that game. That guy has only two emotion levels: intense and very intense. That's it, except for after they won. But man, that guy was in it the whole game. Now, Rob Manfred, when they handed out the medals, made sure that he was waiting to the end. The last guy in was obviously going to be Ohtani, and he's got to hand it to him. I thought he was going to pull a Wayne's World where he's going to say, "We're not worthy. We're not worthy." They got to build him a statue outside every stadium. He is the face right now. They felt so good about him coming on top. Like if MLB wrote out this script for it, and of course he's gonna be a free agent at the end of the year. Wow, Ohtani, you picked the right time to shine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's in the prime of his career, 27 years old. He's a dual threat on the mound, in the box, and he's a special player. It's like once in a lifetime generational player that you get to see on the biggest stage, and he's performing at the highest level. How long is he going to be able to perform on both ends of it? That's to be determined, and we'll find out maybe at the end of this year when a team starts, bidding for him and what he's going to make. But it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how he does and how he performs this year in his prime, and we'll see what the future holds.
Without prying too much as far as any insider knowledge that you may have, uh, was it your gut feeling? Was it the Angels? Was it Ohtani? Was it Team Japan? Why did Ohtani not start that final game? Why did he close it out?
Again, I don't know, what the Angels uh restrictions were when they gave it to Team Japan. Maybe they only wanted him to throw a certain amount of pitches or a certain amount of innings and build him up. I don't know if it was his fifth day or I don't know if it was the Japan manager who just wanted to start the other guy instead. And I just had heard that they were going to use him at the back end and close if they had the lead in that last game. And they used the two best guys that had major league experience. They used Darvish, and then they used Ohtani to close it out. And those guys probably know the hitters the best, anyways. They've probably faced them before, and their stuff is great. So like you can't complain about how they used their roster and how they closed it out.
And I loved the mind games. I love the manipulation where is he going to play? Is he not going to play? He goes down to the bullpen. He's looking at the ball. He's thinking about the ball. Chances are he's not going to come into the game, but maybe he's coming in the game. Like they did not show their cards until the very last second. I loved it. I thought that was great on their part, just to keep everybody on their toes. And again, you're writing out that Hollywood script to have him come in for the final inning. And of course, with two outs, who does he have to face? But his teammate, the second best player in the world, Mike Trout. Buddy, I don't know if they could have written that better. How was that feeling in your estimation for Tawny and Trout at that moment?
I loved it. I thought it was fantastic. I mean, it was one of those things where it came down to the very end, right? And you got two teammates who know each other very well, and what each other brings to the table, and it was just a fun matchup, and that's why you play the game. Like, yeah, you're competing, and you're competing against your friend, and you're competing for your country, but at the end of the day, it's about those special matchups that end up transforming and happening in a game like that.
And I challenge all the fans, go back and watch the footage. Trout is dialed in. He wants to hit him in the worst possible way. He wants that to happen. And Otani is dialed in. He wants to strike him out. And it was just best on best, the best matchup we could have ever asked for. Don't know if they've ever faced each other before because they're teammates. But now, my thinking was they come back to spring training. They walk in through the doors, the clubhouse doors. Trout standing there. Otani comes in. He's like, "Hey, you."
Yeah.
Do you think they tease each other a little bit, or is it long
I'm
forgotten?
sure. I'm sure that there's a little bit of that going on. I'm sure that they talk about it. Whether or not they tease each other, it's a different thing. But you know, uh, they know. Yeah, you got me this time. I'm going to get you next time. And it's just kind of how the inner fire works, so to speak.
Well, figuring out, trying to handicap as far as the numbers of where Otani is going to be landing as we sign up today. Because any talk of Otani, World Baseball Classic, him setting up the biggest stage as far as being the king of the sport. I say his floor right now is 500 million. He's not talking about to anybody for less than 500 mil. And I bet you his agent's going to come in with a $1 billion asking price. Don't think he's going to be getting that. I think it'll be closer to 500. But, it's funny. Where does San Diego come up with this money? They just signed, as we're talking today, they signed another 7-year contract to Jay Cronenworth. And from there, everybody seems to have a 7-year contract. You have a 7-year contract. You have a 7-year contract. And apparently they're readying the books for Otani as well, so that if they can get him, they will not sign Soto. I still think it's going to be the Giants. People are thinking the Dodgers are the favorites. I'm going to assume it's the Japanese West Coast time for marketing purposes. That doesn't hurt as well. And do you have at this point any predictions of where he's landing?
I'm gonna hold off and wait for a little while and
40
see.
games?
Uh, maybe 80. And we'll see how this transpires. But I just think that obviously the top money teams that have the dollars that can do it, San Diego, Dodgers, Mets, Yankees, uh, maybe one or two other teams can afford that price to pay one player. I just eliminate so many other teams, from the bidding war if he's going to get anywhere close to 500 million.
I think for him, it comes down to probably weather, marketing opportunities, the time zone with Japanese time, and because you notice anytime he's pitching, all the billboards, everything miraculously turns into Japanese writing. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a stat when with that final at bat that 94% of Japanese television were tuned in at that point, even
Yeah,
with the time
it's
zone.
crazy. It's crazy.
94%. any television network would kill for those numbers. And when MLB can show that in the future, they got to be smiling. They love it.
They do. They love the fanfare, and they love that that the TVs are tuned in to that type of matchup, and that's why I said, the baseball world won with the World Baseball Classic.
Congratulations to Team Japan again for a great victory, going undefeated. After they went 4-0, I did say they were going to win it all, but that was, I had the advantage also. I waited for a little bit of the tournament, but it could have been Dominican, could have been USA, could have been Puerto Rico. We'll talk about that next week about what transpired in the World Baseball Classic. Steve Karsay, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you for sharing your insights, and we'll see you back next week on The Chosen Journey.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jonathan.